conversing with Mr. Jayesh Ranjan, Principal Secretary, Industry and Commerce and IT, Government of Telangana. Well, this fire chat will be moderated by Mr. Pankaj Dewan, so please help me welcome them on the stage with a huge round of applause.
First of all, sir, let me thank you for taking your time out. We have a lot of questions, and blockchain being a topic where Telangana government has made such huge strides, people look upon you to give an overarching view of how government and policy makers are looking at blockchain. Plus, what are the kind of enabling things that startups can look forward to. So let's dive into the topic on hand today, which is blockchain. And again, Telangana government has been on the forefront of adopting blockchain, coming up with blockchain policy initiatives like blockchain district. And this is well before a lot of other states talked about it or thought about it. So we want you to take us through the journey of the blockchain initiatives in the state. And yesterday you gave us a little hint about some announcement which is going to be made today. So I also request you to talk a little about that.
The genesis of supporting emerging technologies like blockchain came again from that same origin. The message that we got that we should embrace technology, we should embrace startups who bring those technologies. So again, as a government, this is something very novel and very unique, that we created a wing in our IT department whose job was to exclusively focus on emerging technologies. And all this is way back in 2014 rather. So we created a team, and Rama Devi Garu, who heads that emerging technology wing. So this is a wing which identifies which are the technologies which have greater potential to actually solve or provide solutions to some of the pain points of the common person, and who are using those technologies, what are the use cases elsewhere in the world. So in 2014 itself, we had identified 8 such emerging technologies. Of course, AI is something which is very prominent today. In 2014 also, it was beginning to show its prowess. So AI was one, but blockchain was the other one which we had identified. And in those days, again in 2014, the clarity that we have on blockchain today was not that clear. In fact, as all of us would know, the understanding of blockchain was very much related to crypto, that you can have an alternate way of dealing with your financial transactions, which is digital, which is easy to operate. But immediately thereafter, once we decided that we'll get into blockchain, lots of controversies started, like trading in crypto, the valuations, and some people losing their money when the valuations go down and things like that. Became very speculative. Then Reserve Bank started commenting on it, dissuading governments from getting into this kind of activity. And they, for some reason, they're still maintaining that stand, that we should be very wary of crypto. So I'm not taking any stand on that. This is what the Reserve Bank stand was. But then when we started understanding the way blockchain and crypto are getting linked together, we felt that we can disaggregate it. Let the crypto path be followed as per national regulations, because states don't have any flexibility in deciding that they will support crypto or they will ban crypto, etc. But on the technology part, states have complete autonomy to adopt it in whichever way we would like to do. So what we do is that for every piece of technology that we are interested in working on, we do 3 things. One is that we announce a policy or a framework which makes it very known and very public and very explicit what responsibilities will the government take. So what is going to be our role, and what roles do we expect from other stakeholders. For example, what roles will be played by the private companies, what roles will be played by the academic institutions, what role will be played by, let us say, some collaborator from Government of India or some international institution, and what roles will be played by the startup. So that document is there. So our blockchain framework, or the blockchain policy as you call, again is something, and we prepare all these documents through lots of bottoms-up kind of research. It's not a ambitious, top-driven kind of a document. We understand very thoroughly what the community is expecting, stakeholders are expecting, and then provide that in the policy. The second very important thing is, and you can see it everywhere, you can see it in T-Hub, you can see it in other institutions like T-Works, V-Hub, task, rich, etc., that we create an institution which takes responsibility for it. So the institution which has been created to implement our blockchain programs is called Blockchain District. So it's an institutional, it's a governance arrangement, it's an institutional arrangement. So the founding partners when we launched our blockchain programs were a couple of private organizations, a couple of academic institutions, a couple of government of India institutions. So all of them have got together to create what is called a blockchain district with a proper governance structure. There is a person who is the coordinator, there are people who represent these institutions in that blockchain district. Governance happens through that district. And the third very important thing which I already alluded to is the fact that to run all these institutions, we bring talent, the best talent that is available. See, we are never, right from day one, we have never been under any illusion that the government itself is full of talent. In fact, we are very clear in our minds that far superior talent is outside the government rather than inside the government. And you will not believe it, but at least in my two portfolios, I look after the IT and the industries portfolios in the government. In these two portfolios that I handle, close to 350 people have been recruited from the open market who work for us. And these are the people who have been recruited based on their ability, their talent, so when I told you that two of my colleagues are here, they are also not regular government employees. They are people whom we have recruited. They're one of the 350 people. So this again is a very reformative kind of a thought process, that you recognize that government has limitations. Government should stay away from micromanagement. Government should yield space to better talent which is available outside. So this is the genesis of how we have started doing blockchain programs. And when you see the blockchain policy, or for that matter any other policy that we bring out, one of the commitments that we put right up front is that the government will lead from example. So the earliest adoption of blockchain cases will happen in the government itself. And again, I feel very proud to share with you that since 2016, when the policy first came out, and today, or 2017 rather, 2017 and today, that is 2022, 5 years, we would have tried out at least 24 plus use cases in the government. And some of them are very, very significant. I was speaking in an event yesterday. Many of you were there, but not all were there, so I can repeat that example. One of the latest initiatives of ours, we have not publicized it extensively, but we are writing papers on it and will publish it in academic journals and also in a public kind of media, is about remote voting. See, many of us lament that when elections happen, the voting percentage is so low, voter turnout is low. We talk about voter apathy, that people are not connected with democracy, and all kinds of noises are made and all. But whatever could be the reason, one of the basic fundamental reasons is the sheer inconvenience of the voting process. You don't know where your name is, you struggle to find out the polling station, you go there, there's no kind of organized system, you stand in long queues, and sometimes at the end of it you are not even allowed to vote. So all kinds of complications happen on the election day. So we have been able to showcase for the first time in a live kind of a scenario in a town called Khammam in Telangana, a reasonably sized town, a municipal town that is, how can one do remote voting by sitting at your home. So we have been able to showcase how the voter is identified. See, typically when a regular vote happens, in-person voting that is, lots of contentious issues are raised. For example, impersonation is a very big thing. Like, you are not you are voting for someone else, then your voter ID card, your photograph, all these things are matched. There are some agents who are available there, polling agents, they challenge you if they feel that you are someone else. Similarly, you would have noticed this, that lots of doubts are raised about the electronic voting machines, EVMs. And I have seen this so many times, and in some sense it is very ridiculous also, that when a party loses the election, the first blame is put on faulty EVMs, like someone has tampered with the EVMs, and typically say that the ruling party has tampered. Whoever loses, the easiest excuse is to say that I would have won, but they have configured the EVMs in such a way that whatever button I press, all votes are going to this person only, which is blatantly untrue. And some of you may know this, that these EVMs are actually made in Hyderabad. They are configured in Hyderabad. I have actually been to their factory. It's not a factory. It's a, let's say I've been to their office, the Electronic Corporation of India, ECIL, and I have seen, they have demonstrated to me how robust the whole system is, how it is literally tamper-proof and all that. So when you are doing remote voting, these kind of allegations, these kind of doubts multiply many-fold. See, you can't even see who is voting from where. So we have been able to allay all these doubts, apprehensions, to showcase how voter is identified, for which he used a facial recognition technology with a very strong AI algorithm. And we were able to show how the votes will be kept secured till the counting happens by using blockchain. So this is an example where we have been, in a way, able to demonstrate a very strong and a very solid application of technology in a very, very charged and complicated context. See, when many of us, most of us are technologists, so sometimes we don't understand the social context, but many times there's an interplay between the technology and society, technology and social context, and this is a very good exemplar of that. And obviously all of us understand the dynamics around voting. Everything can be questioned, everything can be doubted, everything can be blamed, but we have been able to show a situation where nothing of that sort can happen. So it's a very big achievement, and as I said, it has happened because of the application of blockchain. There have been other examples also. This is not the only one. As I told, there are more than 24 use cases. Many use cases today are common across the country. Educational certificates, securing them on blockchain. Many states do that. We have also done it. Land records, because in the land records also, lots of hera-fairy takes place. Many of you would be familiar with that. In fact, I don't know if it is just a rumor or if there is any truth in it, but in our bureaucracy, this example is often quoted, that someone once even sold the Charminar, showing that it belongs to him, and some gullible person from, I think, Dubai or somewhere, he thought that he's going to own a good property in Hyderabad. So obviously all this happens because the land records are not secure, hera-fairy happens. So this is again a very good example. Yesterday again in that same event where I spoke, I gave the example of chit funds. I don't know whether anyone from chitmunks are here or not. Okay, so they are the ones, yeah, I can see him. So they really attempted something which is very, very bold. See, all of you would be familiar that there is an informal credit system, credit and loaning system, which is called chit funds. And they are popular all over the country. Throughout the country, people subscribe to chits. And it's an extremely messy system, extremely non-transparent. In a state like West Bengal, there's a huge scam which has broken out. It is called the Sharada scam. And at one point, there was even a very real threat that the whole government will come down because of that kind of scam. But it is not to say that scams are happening only in West Bengal. I guess because of the loose kind of way in which chit funds are organized, scam potentially can happen anywhere, and possibly they are happening in many other places as well. So using a application, again blockchain based application called T-Chits, we have been able to streamline the way chit funds are administered, and it has helped in multiple ways. The transparency has come, the ability to have control over the auditing and the accounting, etc., how much money is coming, how much you have to pay to whom, all that has become very, very transparent. 2-3 other very good use cases are there. Here, of course, in all these 3 cases that I spoke about, the land records, the educational certificates and the chit funds, here the attempt was to prevent a mischief, some scam to not happen, some fraud to not take place. But there are positive ways also of utilizing blockchain. And again, I feel very happy. I don't see him. Yesterday he was there, Sid from Stratwig, but I don't think he's here today. or I can't notice if he's here or not. But they have done something for us. This is to improve the credit worthiness of self-help groups, self-help group members. See, some of you may not know this, but in many states in the country, poor women who live in rural areas are organized into self-help groups. And the groups are expected to do regular credit and thrift activities based on which they get some credit worthiness score, and then they receive loans from the banks. And then they repay, they get more loans and things like that. So this system currently ends at the aggregate level, that is at the group level. At the individual members level, you fail to do that scoring. But there is some discipline in the members as well. The group loan eventually gets distributed to the members repay it, then they get back. And obviously there will be variation. Some members will be more prompt, some members will be less prompt. But when you are aggregating everything, this variation gets kind of covered up. So with the help of StatWeek, we are now trying to figure out credit worthiness of an individual member. So while your group may receive loans, you may receive more loans than others because you are much more disciplined and punctual in your credit and savings habits. So again, a solution is coming from StatWeek. When we talk about fraud, etc., there is something else also which we have been able to get some hold on using blockchain. We know that Hyderabad is a very important center for the pharmaceutical industry. And while the industry is doing well, it is really thriving. But one very, very unhappy or a very unpleasant kind of thing which has entered into the system is the manufacturing and sale and distribution of fake medicines, spurious medicines. And in some cases, I mean in practically all the cases, these things can be very, very fatal. I take a medicine with the belief that it is a genuine medicine, but it's a fake medicine. It can kill me also, potentially. So we have again taken the help of a blockchain startup to work out the traceability mechanism of how the medicine has been produced or manufactured, how it has come into the market, and so on and so forth. Another very good use case that we have is called vehicle life cycle management, where the entire journey of a car, right from the time it is manufactured in a factory, because we noticed, in fact, the transport department told us that there are lots of leakages, revenues which ought to come to them. They don't come when particularly the first or the second transfer happens. I bought the car from the factory, but when I sold it to you and you sold to someone else, the transport department is expected to get higher registration when the second sales happen, but that is concealed. No one admits that I'm buying a second-hand car, etc. So now using this vehicle life cycle management, the revenues will improve and obviously mischief and fraud will come down. So there are many, many such examples, and all these are coming again from the very avowed announcement which we have made in our policy that the government will be leader in adoption. We will lead by example, and then enterprises and everyone else is welcome to also encourage blockchain providers to do so.
Amazing, sir. I think I'm sure a lot of people have experienced all these use cases, have been part of it in some way, but for people who have not known this, I think it's been amazing to hear all these use cases from you and the kind of adoption government has done. So before you make that big announcement, there are a couple of questions which the audience has asked. I may take your permission to ask those questions. And taking from the point that you mentioned about Charminar, right? While it's a joke that Charminar was sold, today it's practically possible to sell Charminar, perhaps as an NFT, without actually selling the real Charminar. And that is where a lot of startups want to know what is the clarity in policy in terms of being a more nuanced approach in crypto versus tokens versus NFTs. So you don't have to take an official stance, sir. I mean, I leave it to you, but I just want to, and the audience here wants to know, both from a state level and at a national level, because you are in touch with all the policymakers all the time. You've also been part of the national blockchain policy, which was released, blockchain standards, which was released. So a lot of startups here are in a very confused state as to how do they go forward. So I'm sure you understood the question, request you to dwell on that.
So first of all, I should admit that our confusion is not any less. we are equally confused. But to come out of that confusion, we are doing something very important, very significant. And that was the big announcement which I was planning to make. So I'm glad that you led me to make that announcement. So there is still regulatory ambiguity. Actually, what gave us this idea was that Minister and I were in Davos attending the World Economic Forum in May, just a couple of months ago. And we met a very prominent VC. It's a global VC, but they claim that 45 of the 100 unicorns have been supported. And it's not a wrong claim. It's all well documented. So we met their top brass. And then they told us something, that we are very keen to fund startups in this domain. But unfortunately, all the startups in this domain, once they mature, are either going to Dubai or to Singapore. So we engaged them on this conversation. Why is it? Why do you think that instead of remaining in India, they can go anywhere? They can be in Bangalore, they can be in Gurgaon or wherever. But why are they leaving India? Why should they do that? And then those gentlemen told us that it is because of the ambiguity, uncertainty. They are not sure that if they go ahead in this way, something else will not fall on them. And therefore, to play safe, they're going to these places where there's much more stability of regulation, clarity on regulation, predictability more than anything else of regulation. So at that instant moment itself, we decided that we will help in clearing this confusion, clearing this ambiguity. So the announcement that I'm making is that we are setting up, unfortunately, I'm not able to give you a precise date, but as soon as possible, we are setting up a regulatory sandbox on Web 3.0, NFT, etc. And so the sandbox, as all of you would know, is a place where you are given access to data, mentors are provided, domain experts are associated with you, and whichever domain that you want to work in, we understand fully what are the existing regulations. If you are pushing the boundary in some particular regulation, who needs to approve that? So we get you all those approvals. As a government, it's not your kind of responsibility to run around. And of course, if you're coming with something which is of relevance to the government, we help you in adoption, in scaling up, and all those things. But as I said, like anything else and like everything else, we want the composition of this regulatory sandbox, the governance structures, what will we deliver, what will we call for. It should all be discussed in a larger forum, and based on your inputs and suggestions, etc., we will create it. It's again not going to be a top-down kind of a wishful thing, which we have never done, and in this instant case also, we will not do. And so that is the reason why I asked my colleagues to come here to talk to people in the breaks and networking sessions, etc. So do let us know over a next few days, what do you expect, what are the pain points that you are facing, what are the challenges you are facing, so that when we create this, we create something which addresses all your doubts and concerns and challenges. We also know that in certain areas, I mentioned this already, the state's powers are kind of constrained and the national agencies' powers are more. So we want to also negotiate with those agencies. So we know that RBI plays a very important role in all these things. So we want to actually create the sandbox with tacit approval of RBI. So their arm here is the IBRDT, as all of us know. So we will be discussing with them how would they like the governance, etc., of this regulatory sandbox. Two of the VC firms have shown interest in actually becoming a part of that regulatory sandbox and supporting it. One is the same VC whom we met at Davos. Other is a Hyderabad-based VC, but again a VC which has recently secured a dedicated amount of fund, and it's a very attractive fund to support people in this domain, Web 3.0, NFT, crypto, etc. So we can expect that this experiment, which will of course be continued for minimum 2 to 3 years, will help us not just as a state but as a country to improve the levels of regulation, to be more business friendly. But at the same time, so when I say that there is a pushback from the Reserve Bank, there is a pushback for some reasons which look to be valid. So we also need to ensure that there are adequate checks, balances, no one misuses, no one, kind of makes, they just play with the law, etc. So all those things will be there. But within those legally accepted boundaries, we should hope for a very smooth passage. And just as we have seen a mushrooming of blockchain adoption or AI adoption or IoT adoption, etc., we hopefully will lead this community, the Web 3.0 community, in the same path. Because the fundamental objective of Web 3.0 is very, very important. I mean, that is very relevant, very important, and it is in keeping with the modern ethos of the world that things should be democratized, things should be decentralized. No one should hold any monopoly over the usage of internet, etc., etc.
So I think you gave us more than what we would have ever wished for. Can we have a huge round of applause? I mean, this is going to be as big moment or bigger moment than the initial blockchain policy or anything that has been announced, sir. And I'm sure people outside our state also are going to be very encouraged with this, because this sets a precedence for other governments also to engage, for other governments also to start thinking on these lines and engage with this sandbox that you're talking about. So thank you so much for this, sir. There were a lot of questions, but I think this one point answers most of those questions in principle. And like you rightly mentioned, it's a sandbox, which is a test bed. So obviously, people have to come with their views, suggestions, applications, and then it'll go through its process of validation. But I think you have set that stage and set that framework. So thank you so much. I think it couldn't have been a better day for Web 3.0 than this kind of statement. I'm telling this with all genuinity, sir. Yesterday, there were very hectic messages and calls that I got from some of the NFT companies and others. And they said, can you just put a word to Jayesh sir and ask him, can government take a more nuanced stand, crypto versus NFT versus this, and all this answers all their queries. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for this, this thing. So we can go on with you, and the way you talk blockchain, I'm sure a lot of people who call themselves blockchain experts must be wondering, should they come for a 101 tutorial from you on blockchain? So I think amazing clarity and amazing articulation with which you talk about blockchain, sir. Thank you so much for your time. Can we have a round of applause for